With the discovery that the spouse and children played specific and more or less predictable roles in supporting the alcoholic in his or her drinking so that the family would not be destroyed, attention turned toward helping those family members change the negative coping strategies they had learned. The spouse began to be called co-alcoholic, the person whose pattern enabled the alcoholic to continue an alcoholic lifestyle. Later, when the addiction field broadened to include dependencies in addition to alcohol, the term co-alcoholic changed to codependent, designating a person in a close relationship with anyone destructively dependent on any substance or habit. Thus, the term codependency is related to addiction because most codependents are or have been in a relationship with an addicted or compulsive person. In fact, even the addict is codependent in relationships, a fact that becomes obvious once a substance abuse has stopped. But in recent years, codependency has been increasingly viewed as an identifiable, unhealthy compulsion on its own right. In other words, a codependent person is addicted, not to destructive substance, but to a destructive pattern of relating to other people. A pattern usually learned from childhood in an abusive or non-nurturing home. Codependency holds a person hostage to other people's behaviors, moods, or opinions, and the codependent bases his or her worth and actions on someone else's life. It's a terrible bondage. That explains why, even when an alcoholic or drug abuser got sober or clean, both spouses continue to have relational problems. The destructive patterns of the two partners no longer meshed. Sobriety had been established and the home had become externally less chaotic, but the codependent spouse felt internally more confused and more miserable than ever because the earlier balance, however destructive, had been upset. In addition, the now sober spouse struggled with similar self-doubts, confusion, and guilt because the underlying codependency in the addict person's life had never been addressed either. Perhaps a working definition of codependency is in order. No clinical description has been agreed upon on the family systems or addiction recovery field, but for purposes of this book, we will operate from the following broad definition, which will be examined in greater detail in following chapters. Codependency is a self-focused way of life in which a person, blind to his or her true self, continually reacts to others, being controlled by and seeking to control their behavior, their attitudes, and their opinions, resulting in spiritual sterility, loss of authenticity, and absence of intimacy. Codependency is a matter of degree. Everyone feels controlled by people and circumstances at times. Codependents feel that way most of their lives. Everyone tries to control others to some extent. Guilty. Codependents think they'll lie if they lose control. Think they'll die if they lose control. Everyone has blind spots. Codependents live in denial about basic realities in their relationships. Think of a relationship continuum with healthy mutual interdependence at one end and debilitating codependency at the other. We all fall somewhere in between, but people who live in close relationship to alcoholics, drug abusers, and workaholics, or other addicted persons occupy the codependent end of the spectrum. There are no clear-cut indicators of just when a person steps over the line from being non-codependent to being codependent. With pregnancy, either you are or you aren't. Sorry, I keep losing my spot. You either are or you aren't. You can't be a little bit pregnant, but a person can be a little bit codependent. However, codependency is also progressive. So the longer a person pursues codependent strategies for dealing with life, the more codependent he or she becomes. Eventually, those strategies become an addictive way of life, a person's primary and compulsive method for relating to others and self. And we say of that person, he or she is a codependent. The remainder of this first section, chapters 2 to 6, will examine several characteristics of the self-focused codependent mentality. The first characteristic we'll consider is self-forfeiture, the codependent's loss of self arising from a sense of being controlled by others. All right, questions for building community. So I would suggest to write these down and focus on the wording and try to be as truthful as you can. because this will help you figure out areas that you need some help with, Okay, the first question is, 1, in a sentence, summarize what you understand addiction to be. 1, in a sentence, summarize what you understand addiction to be. 2, how do you understand codependency to be related to alcoholism and other addictions? How do you understand codependency to be related to alcoholism and other addictions? Oh, just kidding. 3, give evidence to show that Jenny, the woman described in the opening paragraph, exhibits the following characteristics of codependency, which will be discussed in coming chapters. A, being controlled by others. Example, being victimized. B, low sense of self-worth. C, trying to control others. D, self-sufficiency and isolation. E, denial about the family problem. So number 3 was, give evidence to show that Jenny, the woman described in the opening paragraphs, exhibits the following characteristics of codependency. A, being controlled by others. B, low sense of self-worth. C, trying to control others. D, self-sufficiency and isolation. E, denial about the family problem. Number 4, what would be your primary emotion if someone suggested you or someone you love might be addicted to a substance or habit? Why would you feel that way? What would be your primary emotion if someone suggested you or someone you love might be addicted to a substance or habit? Why would you feel that way? That's a good question. Number 5. What would be your primary emotion if someone suggested you or someone you love might be codependent? Why would you feel that way? Yeah, read that again. 5. What would be your primary emotion if someone suggested you or someone you love might be codependent? Why would you feel that way? Number 6. What would you do if you thought you or someone you love might be addicted or codependent? It's probably going to be a bit of an easier question. What would you do if you thought you or someone you love might be addicted or codependent? Number 7. Why might Christians be more reluctant than unbelievers to acknowledge the presence of an addiction or compulsion in their lives? These are hard questions, but when you answer truthfully, you will begin the healing process. So I do suggest to take time and answer these questions truthfully. Number 7 said, why might Christians be more reluctant than unbelievers to acknowledge the presence of an addiction or compulsion in their lives? And 8, should Christians set up addiction or codependency ministries when AA and Al-Anon groups are available in most communities? Why or why not? Should Christians set up addiction or codependency ministries when AA and Al-Anon groups are available in most communities? Why or why not? All right, guys, that is the end of chapter 1. I'm going to leave you to work on those 8 questions. Please be truthful. Answer these by yourself. You don't have to feel like anybody's going to be, looking through your things and all that stuff. By doing the hard work, there is healing at the end. So I hope you enjoyed this. I will come back and read chapter 2 once again. But for now, let's just chew on chapter 1 and answer the questions and then start really thinking about if we are codependent and if we've ever encountered codependency in our life and why. And yeah, so stay tuned. Thank you for joining me and God bless you all. Bye.